In the heart of Zaram's dazzling palace, Sheikh Rashad al-Khoury, feared for his merciless pride, ready to plan not of conquest over lands, but over a fragile girl who dared cross his path. His amber eyes burned with a cold fire, promising humiliation veiled as entertainment. Tonight, the web of power would trap innocence, and no soul present would forget the spectacle. The grand hall shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers. Golden pillars stretching toward a ceiling painted with stories of ancient kings. Rich carpets, woven with threads finer than any silk, blanketed the marble floors. The scent of exotic spices mingled with the delicate smoke of jasmine incense, wrapping the night in a heady embrace. Outside, the desert wind whispered endlessly, its secrets hidden beneath endless dunes. Yet inside, beneath the weight of opulence, an invisible chasm yawned between the Sheikh's world and hers. Lena stood in the corner, dwarfed by the glittering sea of nobles and courtiers. Her dress, simple and worn, contrasted starkly with the gilded surroundings. Her dark eyes flickered like timid flames, clouded by fear, yet burning faintly with a defiant spark. The air grew dense as whispered rumors of her lowly origins slithered through the curious crowd, like vipers licking poison from eager tongues. Sheikh Rashad's voice cut through the murmurs, sharp and commanding. "Bring her forward. Let the girl play the piano." His words were a decree and a weapon. The assembly's eyes pinned onto Lena, anticipation as thick as the desert heat. This was no invitation. It was an execution disguised in melody. Lena's breath hitched. Each step toward the grand Steinway felt heavier than the last, the polished keys gleaming under cruelly bright lights. Faces blurred into shadows of judgment. The sharp gaze of the Sheikh lingered, assessing, calculating how utterly she would falter. As her fingers hovered above the keys, the room held its breath. A fragile silence settled, broken only by the faint rustle of silk and the distant echo of desert sands against stone. The cruel game was about to unfold. At first, a single note, but tentative whisper breaking free, escaped. Then another, and another. Lena's hands, delicate yet sure, danced over the ebony and ivory with unexpected grace. A symphony of haunting beauty surged forth. Notes rippled through the hall like waves on a restless sea. The audience, once hungry for her disgrace, now found themselves captive, too. A melody that tore through the veil of status and prejudice. Sheikh Rashad's pride wavered. His usual impenetrable facade cracked as the exquisite music stirred something buried deep in his chest. A tremor of vulnerability. His breath slowed, pulse quickening against his control. For the first time in memory, a woman from the dust beneath his feet unsettled the sands of his empire. The silence that followed was heavier than any roar of derision. Eyes once filled with scorn now shimmered with awe and disbelief. Lena's song was no longer a punishment. It was a revelation. Before the next secret of this emirate unfolds, make sure you're part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be drawn, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave a like if Sheikh Rashad's heart already intrigues you. Tell us in the comments, from which city do you follow this saga, and what twist do you expect next? Your passion for these dramas is what inspires us to continue. Thank you for being with us. The last note lingered in the vast hall. A fragile thread spun from Lena's trembling fingertips, threading through the silence that now clung to the air like thick velvet. The crowd's breath was caught between disbelief and reluctant admiration, their eyes betraying the shock they dared not voice. Sheikh Rashad Al-Khoury stood frozen, a tempest behind his amber gaze, a storm raging beneath a brittle veneer of control. Slowly, his fingers curled into a fist at his side. The cold fire in his eyes darkened, not from fury alone, but from an unfamiliar sting, one sharpened by a crack in his proud armor. Lena's unexpected melody had shattered a world he meticulously crafted, a world where weakness was a sin and power unquestioned. Yet here, in the heart of Zahram, beneath ceilings heavy with history and gold, a humble girl's voice dared to weave vulnerability into his fortress. She played well, Rashad murmured, a low sound that barely reached the ears of his closest advisors. Too well. The courtiers exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the invisible battle already warring inside their ruler's soul. Lena's shoulders trembled under the weight of hundreds of eyes. Relief and dread warred within her. She had survived the trial, but at what cost? Her defiance had announced her presence in a world that sought to crush her like a desert. Wind erasing footprints from the sand. She was no longer invisible, and Sheikh Rashad had not forgotten. As the clapping began, tentative at first, then swelling into a crescendo, Lena allowed herself a fleeting glance at the Sheikh. His expression remained unreadable, but the tension coiled tightly in his jaw betrayed more than he intended to reveal. The evening unfolded like a delicate dance of veiled threats and subtle power plays. After the performance, Rashad's confidant, Mahmoud, approached Lena under the pretense of polite curiosity. Your talent is undeniable, but know this. Flattery in Zahram's palace can be a double-edged sword. Lena's dark eyes met his, steady despite the unease curling in her stomach. I do not seek flattery, she replied softly. Only a chance. Mahmoud's smile was thin, practiced, but a flicker of something almost like respect passed over his features. Be careful, girl. The Sheikh does not take well to surprises. Meanwhile, in the shadowed recesses of the palace, Rashad paced beneath tapestries woven with golden threads, depicting victories long past. Each step echoed his turmoil. He despised feeling unsettled by one so insignificant in his eyes. Yet, Lena's music had awoken something dormant, a fragile thread tying him to a past better forgotten. The pain in his chest grew with every memory he suppressed. She had touched a wound he buried beneath layers of pride and power. Later that night, as the palace hummed with whispered gossip and the scent of amber lingered in vast chambers, Rashad summoned Lena. His voice, when he finally spoke, was colder than the night air that seeped through the ornate windows. You possess audacity, Lena, he said, pacing slowly before her. But audacity without caution is dangerous. Lena met his gaze unwavering, and fear without restraint is weakness, she answered, voice steady though her heart thundered in her chest. A flicker of something unreadable crossed Rashad's face. A challenge, a warning, or perhaps a reluctant acknowledgement of the fire she carried within. "I will give you a choice," he declared, his tone sharp yet tinged with a strange intrigue. "Remain here as a curiosity, a pawn in my court, or prove that your spirit is worthy of the world you have dared to step into." Her breath caught, the air thick with anticipation. Rashad reached out, not with the harshness she expected, but with a deliberate touch, barely brushing her arm, igniting a spark that neither of them could ignore. The silence stretched between them, pregnant with unspoken promises and perils. Outside, the desert wind howled a mournful song, as if warning of the storm gathering within Zaram's gilded walls. The palace, once a fortress of absolute control, was shifting beneath the weight of a new, precarious balance. No one yet understood the extent of the tempest that Lena's defiant melody had unleashed, and Sheikh Rashad Al-Khoury, stood at a precipice he neither wanted to face nor could escape. The next day, the palace corridors buzzed with rumors. Some nobles whispered of Lena's performance, calling her a rare jewel, while others scorned her, branding her an intruder. Yet none dared challenge Rashad's growing fixation. His eyes lingered on her like a hawk circling prey, the cold pride warred with an unfamiliar, unsettling desire. In the solitude of his private chambers, Rashad's fingers traced the smooth surface of an ancient dagger, an heirloom from his ancestors, symbolic of strength and legacy. But tonight, it felt heavy with meaning he could not decipher. Beside it, a delicate sheet of music remained untouched, Lena's composition, a silent challenge inscribed in notes and pauses. A servant entered, bowing deeply, whispering of a message delivered by a traveler, an urgent note from the desert outskirts. Rashad broke the seal immediately, eyes scanning each word with growing alarm. The message spoke of a threat looming beyond the palace walls, one that could unravel the fragile peace of Zaram's reign. His amber gaze hardened, shadows deepening beneath the arches of his brows. The war he had prepared for was no longer one of conquest, but survival. And Lena, whose melody had unsettled the foundations of his heart, stood at the very heart of a storm, far greater than either of them imagined. As he crushed the paper in his hand, Rashad made his decision. The game had changed, and the stakes were more deadly than ever before. The morning sun filtered through the arched windows of Zaram's palace, casting golden spears of light onto the marble floor. Yet the brilliance outside could not warn the chill that clung to the vast halls within. Whispered rumors drifted like dust motes in the air, rumors of Lena's haunting melody and the strange effect it had wrought on Sheikh Rashad Al-Khoury. The man who ruled with iron certainty now seemed a man divided, and the court watched with both fascination and dread. In the private alcove, where rugs of crimson and gold cushioned the silence, Lena sat alone, her hands trembling as they rested in her lap. The memory of last night's gaze lingered like a shadow on her skin. Sheikh Rashad's eyes, fierce yet unfathomable, had pierced her soul under the weight of 1,000 unspoken secrets. Her fingers traced the delicate embroidery of her worn dress, a sharp contrast to the extravagant velvet drapes that swayed softly with the desert breeze. She had tasted both victory and danger. Her music had shattered expectations, but it had also ensnared her deeper into a world far more treacherous than the solitary one she had once known. A knock interrupted her thoughts. The door creaked open, and Mahmoud stepped inside, his face shadowed by a thin mask of politeness. "Sheikh Rashad requests your presence in the council chamber," he said smoothly, voice low enough to carry no hint of mercy. Lena rose, steady despite the thudding of her heart. "I am ready," she replied, the flicker of her defiance still burning in her dark eyes. The corridor to the council chamber was a silent witness to her every step. The intricate mosaics beneath her feet whispered secrets of conquest and betrayal long past. As she approached, snippets of conversation drifted from behind the towering doors. Voices laced with urgency, cautious and calculating. Inside, Rashad stood at the center, his tall frame framed against the massive stained glass windows that bathed him in flickering hues of amber and crimson. His jaw was clenched, lines of worry buried beneath his usual mask of cold command. "We have received disturbing news," Rashad announced, his voice a deep rumble that filled the chamber. "Bandits have been sighted near the eastern border. This is not random marauding. Someone seeks to undermine the stability of Zaram." His amber eyes scanned the faces gathered, trusted ministers and generals who nodded with grim resolve. Lena felt the weight of his gaze shift to her, sharp and calculating, as though measuring her value against some unseen scale. Rashad's words echoed in the chamber, but Lena's mind raced elsewhere. Had her defiant melody, that fragile plea for recognition, only drawn her deeper into the political shadows she had so desperately tried to avoid? A minister stepped forward, bowing briefly. "Sheikh, the threat is grave. Intelligence suggests the attackers are not common thieves, but mercenaries hired by a rival emir," he said. "Their motive is to destabilize your reign and seize control while Zaharam is weakened." Rashad's dark eyes narrowed. "We must act swiftly and decisively." His voice carried the weight of command, but beneath it was a fragile tension, the kind that slips into the bones when a man senses his empire is vulnerable. Lena swallowed hard. The palace, with all its glittering grandeur, suddenly felt claustrophobic, its walls closing in with the unyielding pressure of schemes and danger. After the council dissolved into hurried preparations, Rashad motioned her closer. His proximity sent a sudden jolt through her, a mixture of fear and dizzying uncertainty. The silence between them was heavy, charged with all the words neither had dared utter. "You possess a recklessness most call foolish," Rashad said, voice low. "But I see it as a fire, one that could either burn everything to ash or forge something stronger." Lena met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "I will not be the ruin of your kingdom," she promised softly, "but neither will I be your prisoner." His expression softened, almost imperceptibly, a crack in the armor that few had ever glimpsed. "Then prove your worth beyond music," he challenged, not as a threat, but as a test. Outside the chamber, lonelier winds swept the desert sands, erasing footprints of those who dared challenge fate. Inside, A new game of power was unfolding, one where loyalty and betrayal twined like serpents, their venom potent and unpredictable. As dusk settled, the palace transformed once more. Shadows deepened beneath the grand arches, and the scent of frankincense thickened the air. Lena found herself summoned to Rashad's private study, a room lined with ancient texts and relics that echoed with forgotten wisdom. Rashad awaited her there, silhouette etched against the flickering glow of oil lamps. His gaze held a quiet storm, one neither fully tamed nor rejected. "Your melodies stirred something I fought dead," he confessed, voice husky with a truth rarely spoken aloud. "A past I cannot escape." His hand brushed a faded portrait on the wall, a younger man, fierce and unyielding, bearing a striking resemblance. Lena's breath caught. "Then let me help you bear it." He studied her for a long moment. Then, with deliberate resolve, he offered a sealed envelope. "This arrived today, from the desert tribes beyond Zaram's reach." He paused. "Inside, the map too. The place where my burdens lie buried. You will go there with my trusted men and uncover what lies hidden." The words hung suspended, thick with peril and promise. Lena's heart hammered, not from fear, but from the sudden thrust into a world far more dangerous than any palace intrigue. The desert she thought she escaped now reached out its vast arms, pulling her into secrets older than Zaharam itself. She looked up, meeting Rashad's fierce amber eyes with a spark of resolve. "I will find the truth," she vowed. As she turned to prepare for the journey, a whisper slipped through the shadows. An unseen observer, whose intentions were as veiled as the night. The fate of Zaharam, the fragile threads of love and power, and the secrets buried in endless sands, all awaited her steps. And beneath the starlit expanse beyond the palace walls, the first violent tremor of a hidden betrayal began to shake the desert's eternal silence. The morning sun cast fractured golden light through the lattice windows, setting the marble floors ablaze with shimmering reflections. Yet inside Sheikh Rashad's private study, shadows clung stubbornly to the corners, heavy with the weight of unsaid truths. Rashad stood by the ancient map, spread across the intricately carved table, fingers tracing the faded lines that led beyond the known borders of Zaram. His jaw tightened. The call for survival echoed louder than any royal decree. Yet the threat beyond the palace walls was not the only war demanding his attention. Lena entered quietly, her footsteps muffled by thick rugs of crimson and gold. Her dark eyes met his, steady yet layered with the lingering tremor of the palace's whispered judgments. Tonight, the fragile threads between defiance and submission would tighten. Rashad did not look at her immediately. When he spoke, his voice was low, rough like desert stone worn smooth by relentless winds. "This journey I entrust you with, it is no mere errand. The sands you will cross hide dangers that go beyond bandits and hired blades." A cool breeze stirred the heavy curtains, carrying faint traces of jasmine and the far-off call of a muezzin. Lena swallowed hard, feeling the pulse of destiny tightening around her like a desert storm on the horizon. "What do you fear?" she asked, surprised by the subtle tremor in his voice. Rashad's gaze finally met hers, amber burning with forbidden vulnerability. "Not the desert, not the enemies beyond these walls." His eyes darkened, shadowed by memories too heavy to name aloud. "I fear losing control." The words hung between them, brittle but undeniable. Lena stepped closer, inhaling the scent of aged cedar and oud that clung to his skin. "Then let me be your anchor," she whispered. "Let my presence remind you that strength is not always born from command." For a fleeting moment, the sharp edges of Rashad's stern facade softened. But duty was an unyielding master. He broke the silence. "Tomorrow, at dawn, you leave with my men. You will navigate the wastelands, seek the hidden truths that may save Zaram." Her heart pounded in wild rhythms, a mix of fear and fierce resolve inspiring her forward. This mission was more than a test. It was an invitation into Rashad's fractured world. As she turned to prepare, Rashad's voice caught her arm with urgent force. "Lena." She froze, the weight of his touch igniting a tempest neither could yet tame. "Trust is not given freely in my world. You will earn it through unwavering courage and unbending loyalty." Her gaze met his, unwavering, fire meeting fire. "I will not betray that trust." The tension stretched thin, pregnant with unsaid promises. Independence. Outside the palace, the desert whispered its ancient song. Night folded its obsidian wings over the dunes, the stars shimmering cold and indifferent witnesses to the fragile allegiances birthed under Zaram's opulent roof. The air was thick with anticipation as Lena, cloaked in a simple dark shawl, mounted the camel beside Rashad's elite scouts. Their silhouettes melded into the vast tapestry of sand and starlight, every step deeper into the desert, a step away from the gilded chains of palace intrigue. Yet the greatest peril awaited not in the shifting dunes, but in shadows cast by none other than those sworn to protect. Back in Zaram, whispers curled through the halls like poisonous smoke. Certain courtiers, masked by smiles, plotted to exploit the turmoil. Secrets, long buried beneath layers of silk and gold, threatened to surface, threatening to unravel Rashad's fragile hold on power. Mahmud, ever the serpent in the garden, approached one such conspirator, his servile smile belying the sharpness hidden behind cold eyes. "It seems the Sheikh's attention falters," he whispered. "A woman's melody holds more power than steel these days." A dangerous game unfolded, one where music and blood intertwined. Later, the desert sun rose fiercely as Lena's party approached the edge of a long-forgotten oasis. The landscape shifted suddenly, from barren wasteland to a secret cradle of life nestled between jagged cliffs. Here Rashad's past awaited, etched in stone and whispered by the wind. As Lena dismounted, her eyes caught the fragile ruins, half swallowed by sand. Vines curled around cracked pillars, and a faded emblem bore the mark of a long-lost tribe allied with Rashad's ancestors. She knelt, fingertips brushing the earth, feeling the silent pulse of history beneath her touch. A sudden crack behind her shattered the fragile calm. Spinning, Lena faced a cloaked figure, stepping out of the shadows, eyes as dark and guarded as her own. "Who are you?" Lena demanded, heart jolting between wariness and something deeper. Recognition, perhaps. The figure's voice was a rasping whisper of desert winds. "I am the keeper of secrets you seek, but some truths come at a cost." Fear and curiosity wove a tight knot in Lena's chest. Before she could answer, a distant horn blared, a sharp, urgent call that split the stillness like a dagger through silk. The air grew electric. Above, the sky darkened abruptly, clouds swallowing the sun's mercy. The fragile peace shattered, and in the gathering storm, Lena understood. Her path was no longer her own. The desert dared her to dance with fate. Behind her, footsteps multiplied, silent, deadly. The game of power had turned lethal, and a voice, cold and ruthless as the desert night, whispered on the wind, "They underestimate the fire she carries. But soon, Zarum will learn that even the smallest flame can engulf empires." The desert air clung heavy around Lena, the night's cold biting through her shawl, as the caravan pressed deeper into the uncharted lands beyond Zarum. The moon's silvery glow cast long shadows across the dunes, turning the sand into a sea of restless waves. Behind her, the palace and all its golden facades seemed a lifetime away, both haven and prison, woven into memories she could no longer flee. Her fingers still trembled from the day's revelation. The ancient map laid open like a promise and a curse. What truths lay hidden beneath the endless sands awaited their discovery. But another more immediate danger lurked in the silence behind their footsteps. Rashad's men rode in formation around her, faces grim, eyes sharp with suspicion, sharpened by palace intrigues and desert treacheries alike. The air was thick with tension, each breath a reminder that trust was the rarest treasure here. Lena's gaze drifted to the star-studded sky, thoughts tangled with the memory of his amber eyes, so fierce, so haunted, still echoing her own defiance and vulnerability. Rashad had entrusted her with more than a mission. He had handed her a piece of his fractured soul, veiled beneath that cold pride. Suddenly, a harsh cry broke the stillness. A scout galloped forward, his horse's hooves pounding a frantic rhythm into the earth. "Ambush! From the north ridge! Bandits approach under cover of darkness!" The caravan's pace quickened, dust swirling in their wake. Lena's heart hammered, each pulse a thunder in her chest. The desert, with all its mystery and menace, was no longer just a backdrop. It had become a battlefield where survival tipped on a knife's edge. Rashad appeared at her side, horse moving as one with hers. His amber eyes blazed, the cold fire now tempered by raw urgency. "Prepare yourselves," he commanded, voice low but absolute. "These are no common thieves." As the men drew weapons, Lena's breath caught in her throat, not from fear, but from a fierce surge of determination. She was no longer the fragile girl forced into a gilded cage. Tonight, she would prove her worth. The bandits came like shadows unleashed, their silhouettes slicing against the burning horizon. Arrows flew, whistles screamed, and the desert erupted into chaos. Lena felt the tremor of her camel beneath her as she steadied herself, heart synced with the thunderous pulse of battle. Amid the clash, a sudden crack echoed near, a concealed trap snapping tight. One of Rashad's scouts fell, screaming, but deep, ragged sound, swallowed quickly by the night. Lena glimpsed a figure darting away, too swift to catch. Rashad's fury flared, his voice cutting through the cacophony. They know our movements. This was no chance attack. Someone inside Zahram plays a deadly game. The sting of betrayal coiled bitter in his chest. Every step Lena had taken into his world brought danger closer, not just from desert marauders, but from the serpents cloaked beneath palace silk. The fight turned brutal and desperate. Lena gripped her shawl tighter, the weight of the mission pressing down like the relentless desert heat. Yet as arrows sang and swords clashed, a strange clarity emerged. She was not alone. Rashad fought beside her, the harsh desert, air whipping around his fierce resolve. A bandit lunged at Lena, blade glinting wickedly. Time slowed, the world narrowing to a tempest of survival. Before she could react, a hand seized her wrist, yanking her out of harm's way. Rashad's voice was a harsh growl. "You should never be in front." Shock mingled with a shuddering thrill as their eyes locked, amber meeting dark in a silence charged with unspoken warnings. The desperate dance of survival had forged a fragile bond thicker than words. The bandits finally scattered, defeated by the Sheikh's men, who pressed their advantage with ruthless precision. The desert reclaimed its eerie calm, the distant stars witnessing the scars left in the sand. As Lena caught her breath, Rashad's gaze lingered longer than before, an unfamiliar vulnerability flickering beneath his commanding storm. This desert hides more than secrets. It is a mirror, reflecting the truths we hide even from ourselves. She nodded, voice barely above a whisper, "And I am ready to face whatever it reveals." The journey resumed beneath a sky streaked with dawn's pale light. The oasis they sought appeared like a mirage, an emerald blossom surrounded by jagged rocks and ancient shadows. Here, beneath crumbling arches and vine-strangled walls, the past whispered through the dust. Lena stepped forward, fingertips tracing faded inscriptions etched by hands long gone. The air vibrated with the weight of history and long-silenced voices. Suddenly, a soft rustle behind her made her turn sharply. The cloaked figure from before emerged once more, eyes gleaming with secrets as dark as the desert night. "You seek answers," the figure said, voice low, thick with warning. "But beware, the sands hide more than buried memories. They conceal betrayal." Before Lena could react, a sharp cry cut through the stillness. From the shadows burst a group of horsemen, palace guards, mercenaries, faces obscured, weapons drawn. Chaos erupted again. Lena barely had time to brace herself before a stabbing pain bit her side, a blade's cruel kiss stealing her breath. Rashad's shout tore through the chaos as he lunged forward, fury blazing brighter than ever. The hidden threat was no longer a secret. As the attackers closed in, Lena collapsed against the warm earth, vision swimming with stars. The desert's deadly game had only just begun. And far beyond, in the silent halls of Zahram, A shadow smiled, knowing the true war was just awakening within the Sheikh's heart. The desert. Sun had barely risen when Lena's party reached the threshold of the oasis, a forgotten sanctuary hidden deep within jagged cliffs and sighs of ancient wind. The oasis breathed life into the barren lands, its palm trees swaying gently as if bearing silent witness to secrets whispered long ago. But beneath the verdant veil, the past awaited in shadowed ruins, beckoning Lena closer with a promise laced in both hope and peril. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and growing things, unfamiliar after days swallowed by endless sand. Lena's footsteps fell softly on cracked stones, her fingers trailing along the weathered carvings, etched by hands now dust. Each symbol told stories of alliances and betrayals, victories and losses, bound to the bloodline of Sheikh Rashad al-Khoury. Her breath caught when she found a cracked emblem, an ancient tribal mark she recognized from Rashad's private chambers. It was a key, a link to the burdens the Sheikh bore in silence. A fragile thread connecting her to the enigma entangling both their fates. Behind her, the sound of shifting sand alerted her to movement, a cloaked figure stepping from the shadows, the flicker of something unreadable in their dark eyes. "Truths buried here are dangerous," the figure intoned, voice like the rasping of desert winds. "You chase answers that could ignite storms. Are you prepared to pay the cost, Lena?" Her gaze locked with the stranger's. "I will face whatever lies beneath," she answered, unwavering, despite the quiver in her heart. "For Zaram, for Rashad, and for the future we cannot yet see." The figure inclined, their head slightly, a faint acknowledgement mingling with warning. But before any further words could pass, a piercing horn shattered the stillness, slicing through the oasis's fragile calm. Chaos erupted as distant figures surged into view. Men mounted on horses, faces concealed beneath scarves, stained with dust and shadow, weapons glinting under the emergent sun. Lena's heart thundered. A trap sprung. Rushing forward, Rashad's men drew their swords with lethal precision, the sharp clang of steel ringing out as battle erupted amidst the ruins. Dust and sand churned into a storm as arrow whistles shrieked, mingling with the screams of warriors, caught in the deadly dance. Amid the frenzy, Lena's camels shied and bolted, hurling her toward the jagged ruins. Pain flared suddenly, a sharp bite to her side, as a blade found its mark, stealing. Her breath in a cruel kiss. She collapsed behind a fallen pillar, vision swimming with stars, while the cacophony pressed in. Rashad's roar shattered the chaos. His presence was a tempest, a blaze of fury and protection as he carved a path through their enemies. Their eyes met, amber fierce with desperate concern, clashing with the weight of unspoken fear in hers. As the last of the attackers fled into the shifting sands, silence descended abruptly, thick and suffocating. Rashad knelt beside her, palm pressed steadily against the wound, heat seeping through his fingers like a promise and a threat. "Why were you here alone?" His voice was rough, brittle with the raw edge of worry masked by command. "I wasn't," she whispered, gaze faltering for the ghost of a moment. "But I could not linger in shadows. Truths demand light, even if it burns." He studied her, the harsh lines of his face softening into something that resembled awe, unspoken gratitude, laced with a pain deeper than words. The oasis, once a cradle of ancient power, now bore witness to something new, something fragile and fierce, a bond forged not just by trust, but by shared danger. Night cloaked them as Rashad's men secured the perimeter, the stars casting cold light on wounds both seen and hidden. In the stillness, Rashad pulled Lena gently to her feet, his touch lingering longer than necessity, the air between them crackling with everything left unsaid. "You accept my burden," he said quietly, "but understand this. What lies in the desert is no mere enemy. It is a reckoning." Her dark eyes held his. "Steady. Then we face it together, no matter the cost." A crack of distant thunder rumbled softly, as if the desert itself echoed the gathering storm. Back in Zahram's gilded halls, shadows lengthened and conspiracies brewed, a secret alliance shifting like sand beneath the feet of those who believed themselves untouchable. Mahmud's words snaked through the corridors. The Sheikh's heart falters, his trust has turned to flame. And far beyond the palace walls, in the cold distance where the earth met endless sky, a figure cloaked in midnight pulled back a hood. Eyes cold as the desert night glittered with cruel triumph. "They believe her weakness is their weapon," the voice whispered, venomous and low. "But fire cannot be tamed. It will burn them all." The winds howled their warning, and Sheikh Rashad al-Khoury would confront a reckoning born not just from desert vendettas, but from the fierce woman who dared to set his world ablaze. The game had shifted. The stakes were higher than ever. The desert was no longer just a land of secrets. It was a battleground where love, power, and betrayal collided, where every choice could ignite a war that threatened to consume everything. The desert night still clung tightly around the oasis, where shadows intertwined with the remnants of long-forgotten whispers. Lena's breath came in shallow gasps. The pain in her side, a cruel reminder of how fragile her defiance yet was. Rashad knelt beside her, his strong hand pressing firmly, the heat from his palms seeping into her skin like a vow she couldn't yet decipher. The chaos of battle had ebbed into an eerie silence, but beneath it, tension still hummed, a fragile thread ready to snap. "Why did you go so far alone?" Rashad's voice was rough, fragments of command slipping into the worry he tried to bury. His amber eyes searched hers, fierce with unspoken accusations, and something softer, a rare crack in the impenetrable wall he wore. Lena's dark eyes met his steadily. "Truths do not wait for courtesies," she said softly. "I had to see for myself, to know what burden you carry, what history haunts you." His jaw clenched, muscles tightening as if to hold back a storm beneath his skin. "You're reckless," he growled, but his voice lacked its usual cold finality. Recklessness in Zarham could mean death. A flicker of pain crossed Lena's face, not from her wound, but from the weight of his words, the intangible danger she willingly courted. "Then it's a risk I am willing to bear." Rashad's gaze darkened, pulling shadows into the depths of his amber eyes. "This is no longer a game of power within palace walls," he murmured, voice nearly lost in the desert breeze. "There are forces hungry to see Zarham burn, and they will not hesitate to use what they know of us." She swallowed, the truth hanging heavy in the air like the scent of frankincense, lingering between them. In this oasis, fragile in its beauty, but ruthless beneath the surface, the past and present collided, threatening to swallow them both. Rashad rose slowly, his tall frame silhouetted against the creeping dawn. "You have seen more than I intended," he muttered, "and it changes everything." Lena winced, the pain stitching through her ribs. Yet beneath her fragile exterior, a quiet flame burned, one Rashad had begun to recognize as dangerous and necessary. As the first pale light spilled over the ruined stones, they moved back toward the waiting party. But Lena's resolve was shattered by a sudden cry, a voice raw and urgent, from the edge of the oasis. She turned sharply, only to catch sight of cloaked figures slipping among the palms, shadows weaving with deadly intent. Rashad's hand shot to the dagger at his belt, eyes blazing with swift understanding. "Ambushed again," he hissed. "They are relentless." The calm fractured into chaos once more, as arrows arced through the air, whistles slicing the dawn. Lena's heart hammered wildly, but this time she did not flinch. Sword at her side, she steadied herself beside Rashad, the fierce sheikh whose fortress of pride was cracking open to reveal a man torn by loyalty and doubt. Together they fought, not as ruler and pawn, but as two forces intertwined by fate and defiance. Amid the primal clash, footsteps thundered closer. From the swirling dust emerged a figure, familiar, yet impossible. Mahmud. His cold eyes shimmered with cruel triumph beneath the stained silk of his headdress. "Did you really believe your precious palace was safe?" he sneered, voice laced with venom. Rashad's glare hardened, fury igniting a tempest in his gaze. "Traitor!" Mahmud's smile was a serpent's flicker. "A necessary move to unseat the fragile throne you cling to." Lena's breath caught, the realization stabbing deeper than any wound. The enemy was not merely the desert or distant rivals. It was betrayal from within. The battle surged around them, but amid the noise, their gazes locked, a silent promise charged with danger and urgency. Rashad's voice dropped low, fierce and unyielding. "This ends now, Mahmud, or everything we fought for will burn." The traitor laughed, retreating into the dust, swirling like ghosts. "This is only the beginning, Sheikh. The empire you built is crumbling, starting from the inside." As the dust settled, Lena sank to her knees, strength wavering, but spirit unbroken. Rashad extended his hand without hesitation, pulling her up with a gentle roughness that betrayed no affection, yet spoke volumes. Outside the oasis, the desert stretched in endless silence, indifferent to the wars waging beneath its stars. But within the heart of Zaram, and within the fragile bond between Lena and Rashad, fire now raged fiercer than ever, for the game they played was no longer merely for power or survival. It was a battle for their souls, and somewhere, deep within the shifting sands, a voice whispered a single chilling truth. The greatest betrayal is yet to unfold. The wind carried the words across the dunes like a warning, and Sheikh Rashad Al-Khoury knew, with a sinking dread, that the storm gathering was not just outside his palace walls. It was rising within his own bloodline. in the very heart of his kingdom, and in the woman he could no longer afford to lose. The night deepened around the oasis, cloaking its ancient secrets beneath a quilt of starlight. Lena's breath came slow, each inhale trembling, not just from the wound searing her side, but from the weight of everything unraveling. Rashad remained kneeling beside her, his hand unwavering and hot against her skin, a stark contrast to the cold shimmer of the night around them. His amber eyes, fierce flames against the darkness, searched her face, as though desperate to decode the unspoken turmoil that stormed inside. "Why did you risk so much?" His voice broke through the silence, gruff, but layered with a brittle edge of fear. "To walk alone into danger when you're already caught in the web of palace intrigue." She met his gaze squarely, though pain crept beneath her steady facade. "Some truths cannot wait for safer paths," she said softly. "I needed to see with my own eyes the weight you carry and the shadows that stalk us both." Rashad's jaw clenched, muscles taut with a silent struggle. "Your recklessness could cost more than life," he warned, voice low but cold. "And yet," Lena replied, voice firmer despite the ache, "some risks are worth bearing if they shine light on the darkness." A rough exhale escaped him. He rose, the fabric of his robes whispering beneath him, and cast a glance toward the ruins that loomed like broken memories. The oasis, once a sanctuary of forgotten peace, now felt claustrophobic, its beauty marred by the ever-present threat stalking their every move. "We fight battles not just outside these walls," he murmured, voice heavy with the past. "Enemies, hidden, cunning, are devising a ruin far worse than swords." Lena's fingers tightened instinctively on the edge of a cracked stone, her heart tightening with his warning. The desert around them was no longer just untamed land. It was a battlefield where shadows moved with deadly purpose. The sudden crackle of movement nearby snapped their focus to the brush. Figures, cloaked in dust and shadow, slithered between the palms like ghosts of death. Arrow shafts gleamed briefly before tearing through the air, whistles shrieking a metallic chorus. Rashad's hand went instinctively to the hilt of his dagger, eyes narrowing into slits of feral fury. "Ambush!" he growled. "Again!" Lena steadied herself beside him, pain momentarily forgotten. The fragile girl instrumentalized into a force born not of privilege but survival. Her shawl slipped from her shoulder, revealing a sweat-dampened brow and hands that no longer trembled with fear. Together, they faced the storm. Blades flashed, battle etched the air. Shouts, steel, and the scent of dust and iron. A harsh cry drew Lena's attention. A flash of movement, too quick, too deliberate to be chance. A knife slashed across her side, sharp and unforgiving. Pain bloomed instantly. Breath stolen in a brutal gasp. Before she could collapse, a strong hand gripped her arm with iron resolve, pulling her back into the circling fight. "You belong behind me," Rashad commanded, not harshly, but with the brutal certainty of a man who both protected and guarded his own soul. She locked eyes with him, amber swirling with storm and fire. The moment hung heavy, an electric thread tightening between them, charged with raw, unspoken emotion. The tide of battle finally turned. Bandits fled into the creeping shadows, defeated by the ruthless precision of Rashad's warriors. Stillness descended with a weight that pressed on their chests like the desert heat at noon. Rashad knelt again, pressing his palm firmly over Lena's wound. His touch burned communion, a silent promise woven between pain and healing. "Why did you go so far alone?" His voice cracked with anger, tempered by worry. "I had to," she whispered, "because if we do not face our demons now, we will never be free of them." He studied her, vulnerability flickering, a crack in his legendary pride. "You carry a dangerous fire. And you," she said softly, "hold wounds you refuse to face." A taut silence followed, their worlds colliding in a fragile embrace of truth and defiance beneath the indifferent desert stars. But calm shattered again. Voices rose in urgent alarm. Dark figures slipped through palm. Shadows, the echo of betrayal bitter in the dawn's fragile light. From the dust charged with chaos stepped a face known too well, Mahmud. His smile sharp as a venomous blade, his eyes glinting cold betrayal. "Did you truly believe the palace was safe?" His voice was ice cutting through heated air. "Power shifts, Sheikh, and not always in your favor." Rashad's amber fire blazed, fury and pain mingling. "Traitor." Mahmud's laugh was a poison-laced hiss. "Fragile thrones beg for breaking. This empire, it crumbles within." Lena's breath hitched, betrayal stung deeper than any blade. The enemy was not only in the desert, but nestled in the silken shadows of Zaram's gilded halls. The fight reignited, a rapid, desperate torrent of steel and will. Amid the fury, Rashad's hand found hers, gripping, anchoring, more than a command. A silent vow, forged in the furnace of shared peril. Mahmud slipped away, his threat a dark cloak swirling with ruin. The desert stretched ahead, vast and eternal, unmoved by human struggles beneath the heavens. But inside Zahram's citadel, a war raged with newfound ferocity, a battle not just for power, but for the fractured souls of those caught in its merciless grip. And somewhere, as the relentless winds howled, a whispered truth carried on the night's breath, a promise and a threat. The greatest betrayal has only just begun. The dawn spilled its first golden light gently over Zahram, turning the palace's marble spires into beacons of soft warmth. Inside, a calm stillness reigned where chaos had once roared, a fragile peace settling like a whispered promise. Rashad stood by the arched windows, amber, eyes slow to adjust to the brightness that felt both foreign and hopeful. The weight of recent battles, of betrayals and wounds, heaved heavy on his chest. But now there was something new, a quiet resolve that had begun to root itself amid the ruin. Lena sat nearby, in the sunlight filtering through intricate screens, a shawl draped loosely around her shoulders. Her dark eyes held the softness of survival and the strength carved from every step she had taken, steps that had led her irrevocably into the heart of this golden fortress and into the very soul of the man who ruled it. The pain from her wound had faded, replaced by a radiant glow of endurance and something deeper. Love tempered by trials, yet fierce as ever. Rashad's voice broke the silence, low and steady. The betrayal runs deeper than I imagined. Mahmud's treachery may have struck with venom, but it fractured us only to reveal our true strength. He turned, his gaze steady on her. Your courage saved me, Zaharam, more than you realize. She met his eyes without hesitation. And you saved me, from the shadows of doubt, from the cold walls of silence I had built around my heart. For a moment, the world fell away. The opulence, the deserts, the palace intrigues, and all that remained was the fragile, trembling hope between them. Rashad stepped closer, closing the distance that once burned with untamed pride. His hand rose, brushing a stray lock of hair behind Lena's ear, a touch tender, yet charged with the weight of all they had endured. You are no pawn, he whispered. You are my equal. The fire I thought would burn us both has forged something unbreakable. Outside, servants and courtiers moved with purpose, the palace beginning to pulse with renewed life. News of Mahmud's exposure spread quickly, his plot unraveled beneath the crushing force of Rashad's justice. The traitor was stripped of power, banished beyond the desert's reach where few dared follow. The court, once divided and whispering suspicions, now rallied around a ruler transformed. A man who had faced his demons and emerged tempered, his heart finally unshielded. Lena rose, steady and radiant, as she moved to Rashad's side. There was an unspoken understanding that this was not merely an alliance born out of necessity, but a union rooted in respect, redemption, and a love that had borne the harshest trials and emerged blazing. Together, they walked through the gardens blooming with rare desert roses, fragile blossoms that thrived against all odds, mirroring their own journey. The fragrant petals caught the morning light, releasing a scent, delicate yet unforgettable, weaving through the air like a silent celebration. Rashad faltered only briefly before speaking again, voice husky with honesty. I carried the weight of solitary power for too long. I thought strength meant ruling without mercy. But it is your spirit that has shown me what true strength is. Vulnerability embraced, trust earned, and love given freely. Lena's answer was a soft smile, one that reached every corner of her soul. And I have learned that even the smallest flame can ignite the darkest nights. With you, I am not afraid anymore. Their hands clasped, fingers interlacing, a silent vow beneath. The endless desert sky that stretched beyond palace walls. The sun crowned them, bathing Zahram in warm light. A new era dawning on the endless sands. Weeks passed, and with them came healing. The palace echoed once more with laughter and music, no longer weaponized, but a true celebration of life renewed. Rashad's rule became one of tempered justice and compassion, his amber eyes softened by the love that had dispelled the shadows of pride and fear. Lena, once a girl of whispered rumors and cautious glances, became the heart of the court, adored not for her origins, but for the strength, grace, and fire she carried within. Together, they rebuilt what had been fractured, trust with their people, peace within their walls, and hope blooming like the desert flowers, resisting the harshest heat. One evening, beneath a canopy of stars blinking like ancient promises, Rashad led Lena to the palace balcony, where the cool night breeze carried the scent of jasmine and promise. He took both her hands in his, voice grave yet full of warmth. "Will you marry me, Lena? Not as a subject or a prize, but as my partner, equal in spirit and soul." Tears shimmered in her eyes, a radiant bloom of joy and certainty. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The wedding, a celebration both intimate and grand, was held beneath the open sky. The palace courtyards overflowed with vibrant color and music, the people rejoicing in a story of redemption and love that had conquered vengeance and betrayal. Their vows intertwined ancient traditions and new beginnings, binding two souls whose destinies had been written in the stars long before. In the days that followed, as calm settled over Zarum like a warm embrace, Rashad and Lena stood side by side, looking out over their kingdom, no longer as ruler and outsider, but as equals, as lovers, as partners who had faced storms and emerged stronger. Their story, whispered among the shifting sands and sung in moonlit oases, was one of transformation, a testament to the power of courage, forgiveness, and the relentless flame of love. For in the heart of Zarum, beneath the glimmer of chandeliers and the vast desert sky, the Sheikh Billionario and the woman who dared defy empires had found their forever. Peace settled over the emirate like a gentle tide, and a new dawn painted their world in colors of hope and endless promise.